Hello beautiful people, welcome back to the channel. Pots and Petals here, everything garden and allotment related. As you can tell, we've got a bit of a miserable day today. We are due some thunderstorms tonight and a little bit of rain, so fingers crossed because we haven't had much rain lately, but let's just hope that it holds out today so that we can get a few jobs done. So the main reason I'm down today is I want to get some cuttings. So we've got some dogwood, rose, some hardy fuchsia, but also some rosemary and lavender that I'd like to get potted up and hopefully get some cuttings for next year. You might remember that I've got the area just round the shed that I'm thinking about planting up next year to create a seating area slash nature area. So I'm trying to get as many discounted plants as possible now and trying to bring them on ready for next year to make it as cheap as possible for me. So I'll take you through some of the discounted plants that I've got, and we will be splitting some astilbes as well. And I have got a couple of other new plants, so a nice foliage plant and a couple of pond plants which I'll show you. But let's go over to the plant hospital, have a little look at the discounted plants that I've bought this week and a couple of the newbies as well. These are the latest recruits to come and visit the Pots and Petals Plants Hospital. So everything on this table is either 50% or less, other than the colocasia, which is this beautiful plant, but we'll get to that in just a moment. As you know, I want to fill the space around by the shed, but also the idea of buying these cheap plants are to get either more cuttings or to propagate them in some way so that I'm getting real bang for my buck. So let's run through what I've got, why I like them, and what we're going to do to them to get more from them. We'll start from the plants from left to right. So on the left hand side over here we have got a Cornus, which is also known as a dogwood. It is starting to wilt, it's looking very sad and sorry for itself, but if you did see the size of the pot that it was in, you'd understand why. So I'm hoping that just by repotting that's going to give it a whole new lease of life. However, the reason I bought this plant was because there's a lot of stems in there that need to be removed, and dogwood is probably one of the easiest plants to take cuttings from. I'll show you how to take the cuttings in a moment, but dogwood is generally grown for its beautiful stems. So in the winter time, when all the leaves are falling off, the stems will transform into these absolutely bright, vivid, beautiful colours. You can get yellows, you can get reds, purples, and they really do create an attractive display throughout the year. Because even in the spring and summer you have all that beautiful green foliage and these diddly little white flowers on them as well, a bit like a skimmia. So we'll repot that, take some cuttings from that in just a moment. Next to the Cornus we have got a flaming rose. Now all it said on the pot was mini, so I'm guessing that it's not going to grow very tall. This plant did have a bloom out, so I could tell what the flower colour was going to be, and it's this salmon colour, and the smell is a proper traditional rose smell. As you can see, it's got two very straight stems, so I thought I would use one of the stems as cutting material. We should be able to get 2 or 3 easily out of this stem. But then the other stem seems to be perfect for a tree lollipop shape. So it's straight all the way up, and then at the top it's now starting to fan out exactly like a tree. So I'm hoping I should be able to keep that lollipop effect. So we'll give that a good repot and also take some cuttings from it. And I still think it's got one more bloom to come. Then onto the metal table. At the front here we have got 3 astilbes. So I'm not too sure what the colours are. They normally come in pinks and whites. And I've got 3 pots there, but if I look carefully, I think there's at least 2 per pot, maybe 3. So maximum plants I'm going to get is 9. I reckon the least I'll get is 7. And as I said at the beginning, these are all discounted, so I've really got a real good deal out of those 3 pots there. Astilbes have these feathery flower spikes, so I'm hoping that if I chop some of these down they might shoot again, but once I've potted them up I really would like them to put more root growth on than anything else. Astilbes do prefer a shady condition, they don't like full sun, and they do like a nice moist soil, but keep it free draining. So they should work quite well round in the shed. And if they are the white colour, white is what I'm going to go for around the corner, because it is going to be quite shady. I think white will work quite well in there. And then at the back here, this is a miscanthus, so it's called Klein Silberspine, so I'm guessing it's German, and they can reach about 1.2 meters in height. And they've got these beautiful sort of reddy browny plumes on the top, which you can just see. Now these do like a full sun sight, but I am going to try them round the corner by the shed. I mean, it does get a lot of sun in the summertime, it's just the winter where the light levels do drop because of the trees and the low level sun. So I'm hoping it won't find it too shady round there. I'm not going to worry about dividing this plant up just yet. It does prefer to be divided in autumn, but I'm going to let it get a little bit bigger. So I'm hoping it's going to be in its proper home by the autumn time. if not spring, by which time I'll let it get a little bit bigger before I start thinking about cutting it up and moving it around the plot. And this beast at the back, this is a Rudbeckia. I noticed it still had loads and loads of buds ready to pop, and it was half price, so I thought I'd pick that up. They say that they are hardy, but with really bad frost they can rot out over the winter, so just make sure you give them a really good mulch. I'm hoping that once I've got some of the wild area cleared out, I'll find this one its forever home in the next couple of weeks. And then down here, very similar, we've got a fuchsia. So they say they're hardy, but I have been known to lose a fuchsia over our winter periods. So I'll be taking cuttings from that. I did notice it's got loads of stems on there, which would be worth taking cuttings from. So I don't think I'm going to even try and keep the mother plant. I'm going to get as many cuttings from that as possible, but I'll take you through that in a moment. They have these beautiful bell-like flowers. You get so many different types nowadays. You can get double blooms, single blooms. I think this is a traditional single bloom, but back at home my nan's hanging baskets are absolutely full of all these fancy ones. I'll see if I can pop a couple of images up for you. It really does just take me back to childhood and helping my nan out in the garden, and I think it was petunias and fuchsias were the first flowers that I remember deadheading and getting your fingers covered in all of that sap. It really takes me back. And these two little pots down here, these are some new pond plants. So these are called water lettuce. And what they'll do is they'll float on top of the surface throughout the spring and summertime, but in the autumn and winter they sink down to the bottom. So they do have some oxygenating properties, just not as good as your normal oxygenating plants. I'm just hoping it will create a little bit of cover in there for some of the newts, and it's just an interesting plant to have floating on top. So we'll go and pop them into their home in just a moment. So we're going to save the best till last, but this is a buddleia, also known as a butterfly bush, and this is called flutterby lavender. So it's actually quite a compact variety. They normally get quite tall, and you do have to keep on top of the pruning in the springtime, but this supposedly only gets to 5 or 6 feet, which is quite small for a buddleia. It produces these really bright, vivid purple flowers to begin with, but as they start to open up and fade in the summer light, they turn into this gorgeous lavender colour. And the great thing about this variety is that it doesn't self-seed, because buddleias are really known to self-seed all over the place and can be quite aggressive and invasive. And then finally, look at this beautiful plant. It's a colocasia, which is a Royal Hawaiian black coral. Now these can grow up to about 4 or 5 foot tall in the right conditions, and they are perennial, but they do not like our frosts. So I'm going to have to think about bringing this in over the winter time. I believe it's similar to a begonia in that it will have a corm, so you don't want to be giving this a lot of water over the winter period, just enough so that it doesn't dry out. So I will be taking this home so that I can keep an eye on it more than it being down on the plot. I absolutely love the colour. It's that deep purple burgundy, and I think growing with some, I don't know, some verbena and maybe a couple of orange geums would look really stunning once it really does start to get big. So I'm hoping I can keep this on year. And because I'll be digging it up every year, it's never really going to have a solid place. So I think I will find a really nice pot for this to go in. So all in all, I don't think that's a bad haul at all. So the fuchsia, I mean, we should, if they all took root, get 20 plants out of that. The astilbes, we've got 3 pots there, each with at least 2 in. So that's 3 new plants. And then the rose, we're going to make 3 out of that cutting. And the dogwood, we can easily make another 5 to 10. So fingers, toes, everything crossed that all of these cuttings start to take root over the next few weeks. But let's now jump into the actual taking cuttings, why we do it, how we do it. So I think we'll start with just splitting the astilbes just while I take you through what cuttings are. We're just going to split this astilbe while I take you through exactly what cuttings are. So cuttings are basically just a form of propagation. And by propagation, what we mean is producing more plants from a mother plant. So you can get propagation in loads of different ways. The one that you probably know the most is by sowing seeds, which is just seed propagation. But you've also got root cuttings, leaf cuttings, you've got runners that you can pot up, you can divide as well. So there are plenty of ways that you can propagate your plants. Propagation is a really good way to increase the plants that you really love. One thing to remember is whenever you do take cuttings or propagate from the mother plant, make sure that the mother plant is really healthy and at its best. You can take cuttings throughout the year. There's all types of different cuttings, from softwood to semi-hard and hardwood cuttings. So at this time of year, we want to be looking at semi-ripe. So it's a mixture of hardwood, but also the new fresh growth from this year. We'll be doing the cuttings in a moment, but this time of year, well into September, October, is also a great time to start splitting and dividing your plants. Maybe now is a little bit too early, but definitely when we start getting into September is a great time. Now, because these are shop bought and they've been in a pot, I'm not too bothered about splitting them up. They should do absolutely fine like the other ones have as well. We've potted these into some nice fresh new compost, and we'll give the old flower stalks a cut down because we don't want them turning into seed. We want the energy to be going into the root ball, and hopefully they should both start coming along quite nicely. Okay, so let's start taking some actual cuttings. So before we start anything, we are going to need a few things. So a nice pair of sharp secateurs, all nice and cleaned up. We might need some rooting powder just to be on the safe side. You're going to need some pots and also some compost with either some grit or vermiculite. Once we've got all of that together, we're good to go and start taking some cuttings. So we're going to start off with the rose. You can take rose cuttings from May to December, but I'd say it's a lot harder in the winter time because they're more prone to rot away. So the best time is from late spring into summer. You really want to be using either this year's growth or last year's growth. Anything older and it's more likely to rot than it is to take root. So we've got two stems on this rose. One we're going to take off for cutting and the other one we're going to leave on and see if we can create that lollipop tree shape. This is the perfect stem for taking cuttings from because it is about a pencil size in width, which is exactly what you're looking for, and we want about 10 inches. So it's probably about 25, so we should be able to get at least 2 plants from this. So we're going to start by taking it off from the bottom, but I am going to cut above a node so that if this plant does decide to shoot out again, it can do just from this bit here. So we've got a nice long stem there that we're going to be able to use to take some cuttings from. So it's now important that where we make these cuts are in the right places. So I'll take you through what we need to do. You'll notice along the stem there's these little nodes, which is where the leaves used to be, and at these points you're going to find that either new leaf growth is going to emerge or root growth depending on where it is, and it's really important as to where we make these cuts. So the ends that you're going to call the base of the plant, we want to be cutting just below a leaf node, as this is where your roots are going to start to develop. But then at the top, this is where we're going to cut above a leaf node, because this is where new leaves are going to form and help to photosynthesize and create energy for that plant. Some people do decide to remove the thorns, but I haven't really found that it's made a difference. It just makes it a little bit safer, but I suppose you could prick your finger off whilst trying to remove them. Just do go careful when you are popping them into the soil. As you can see, I have put them down the sides of the pot. And what this helps with is the root growth. So instead of just producing one long root, as it hits a boundary, the root starts to break off. So the thought is that by putting them up against the side, the roots are going to hit the side of the container and produce more roots. And more roots mean more water and more nutrients for the plant. You'll notice 3 of them are stalks, but one of them has got some leaves on there, so I'm hoping that will produce some photosynthesis and create a little bit more energy. But to be fair, in the past when I've taken rose cuttings, they've never had leaves. I've always taken them into stalks like this. So these will go into the poly house as it will be high humidity, and fingers crossed it won't be long before these start to develop a root system. Don't forget to give them a real good watering in. Some people say that you should put them in a plastic bag to add humidity, but as I said, the poly house should be enough. Next we'll move on to the fuchsia. So they say that they're hardy, but I do find that I lose these quite a bit, especially now we're getting quite harsher winters, so it's always safe to take some cuttings from these. When I first saw the plant, I didn't think of all the flowers that it's going to give me. I thought of cuttings, 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 because there's a lot of non-flowering stems on this plant, which is exactly what you need. We're going to want lengths of about 4 to 5 inches each. So again, like before, we're going to be cutting below a node and then above a node. You'll want to remove the lower leaves, the bit that you're putting into the soil, otherwise these could rot off, rather than help you grow any roots on your little cuttings. You want to leave a few leaves on top just to help the plant photosynthesize and build up some energy to put into those roots. And same as before, we're just going to dip it in some water, into the rooting powder, and then into the corners and side of the pots. You want to remove the top growth of the plant, as this will lead to a lot of water loss. You'll notice I'll say roots quite a lot because cuttings is all about promoting that root growth. Dogwood is probably the easiest cutting to take, so we're just going to cut below and above a leaf node again. They are a little bit more difficult to see, but if you look really closely you'll be able to find them. With this plant I am just going to thin out the middle because it is quite congested in there, and I want to cut each of the cuttings into probably about 10 to 12 inches long. And then once they're cut, we will literally just push them into the compost and they should start to take root. We will use some rooting powder, but to be fair, it's probably not needed. I'd say Cornus, dogwood, and willow are probably the two easiest plants to take cuttings from. Finally, we have got the rosemary. So you want to be cutting sort of 4 inches long strips, and you want a mixture of the harder wood and then the soft wood on top. And we're just going to start by removing some of these lower leaves because we don't want them to rot the soil underneath. So we'll just take them off. And we're also going to want to take that top leafy growth off as well, so just snip that off. Now don't forget, at the bottom you want to be trying to cut below a leaf node, and always cut diagonally. So diagonally below does allow more surface area for roots to grow, and on top, a diagonal, it allows the water to run off and not sit on top, and that could rot and harm the plant. So we'll just go through and literally top and tail all of these, pop them in the water, in the rooting powder, and then into the soil, and hopefully some of these will start to root. So just from some simple propagation, and that's just splitting and cuttings, we should hopefully get 16 rosemary, 10 fuchsias, 4 roses, 8 dogwood, and then we've got 5 astilbe here, and I've still got 2 more potted up down on the floor. And all of that is free. Just a little bit of soil and some perlite and a bit of your time, and you should be able to stock up a large amount of plants from your garden. It might be that you've got a plant in your garden that you just want more of, and it's a great chance to really start multiplying on those plants. It could even be that one of your friends has got something that you'd really like, so you would be able to take a cutting from that. All I say is just Google the plant that you're wanting to take a cutting from and find out the best way and when to do it. That's all you really need to know. I've just popped these into the poly house as it's really humid in here, which is what your cuttings will want. You could stick a little plastic bag over the top, which will create exactly the same effect, but as you can see, I've got tomatoes galore in here. Now it has taken a little bit longer, this video, so I think I'm going to save this tomorrow and we can do a harvesting video and a seed saving video. So we've got 2 groups of plants at the moment. This group I still need to pot up and just give a little bit of extra care. And then just across the side, we've got these guys which have already been given some love. We've got some runners in there as well from the pine berries. And then just down here, this is sort of Hospital Bay. So I've given them all a really good pot up, lots of nice new compost and a water. And I'm hoping a lot of these will start to boost back. If you watched a previous video, I did show how I got a load of discounted plants and done something pretty similar today. I just didn't go into the detail of taking cuttings. So if you want to see another plant haul, just pop back a couple of videos and you should be able to find it. That's all we've got time for today, folks. I thought I would just pop down to the pond because I'm loving the new water lettuces. I think they're really funky little plants floating around in there, and they've got this really unusual sort of furry leaf that's really hydrophobic, so the water just runs off it. But yeah, really nice little addition to the pond. But I'll be back down tomorrow, so I'll be doing a harvest video, and we'll also save some of the seeds from the wildflowers so that we can sow some of those. And I also want to get some of the other plants sown as well. I know it's been quite plant heavy the last few days, but there isn't much going on in the vegetable world other than waiting for them to ripen and harvest. So don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, all of that good stuff, and I'll see you all again tomorrow. So take care, guys. Bye bye.